Look, we all know that at some point, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 3 will happen. It's gonna happen. It's not a question of if, at this point, it's simply a question of when. With that said, these are some of the reasons why Dragon Ball Xenoverse 3 will happen at some point. Don't forget to leave a like on the video and to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And let's begin. We know 100% that at least at some point there were tentative plans for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 3. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that it was actually me who found this out, that Bandai have registered websites for Dragon Ball Xenoverse3.com and for Xenoverse3.com. The reason we know this is because Bandai also registered Dragon Ball Xenoverse.com, Dragon Ball Xenoverse2.com, and Xenoverse2.com. Quick note, the who is information, or who dot is information for Dragon Ball Xenoverse.com isn't coming up for some reason, but if you go to the website, it will take you to the Bandai Xenoverse 2 website, so don't worry about that. But if you look up the who is information for Xenoverse 2 and Dragon Ball Xenoverse2.com, it does say that it was registered by Bandai Namco in France. However, on Xenoverse 3 and Dragon Ball Xenoverse3.com, it's registered in France, but everything else has been redacted for privacy, because obviously they don't want to show all of their cards right away for a third Xenoverse game, especially right now as they're trying to sell more copies and DLC for Xenoverse 2, which as of right now, about 5 weeks ago as I'm recording this, give or take, received the latest DLC update, Future Saga Chapter 2, DLC 18, and don't worry, I'm going to talk about that later on in this video. But the reason we know that Xenoverse 3 and Dragon Ball Xenoverse3.com are Bandai websites is because those four websites, once again, Xenoverse2.com, Dragon Ball Xenoverse2.com, Xenoverse3.com, and Dragon Ball Xenoverse3.com were all registered on the exact same day back in late 2014 on the 9th of December 2014. And each year on the same day, these websites do get renewed for an additional year. It's been like this since 2020, 2021 when I first found out about it, so it would have been going since late 2014, about 2 months before Xenoverse 1 was released. So at some point, they did have plans for, of course, Xenoverse 2, which we have right now, and at least some sort of tentative plans for Xenoverse 3, even if it was for a second or for a nanosecond. But given that they are deliberately and manually updating the domain and renewing the date for an extra year for specifically Xenoverse 3 and Dragon Ball Xenoverse3.com instead of letting the domain slip, tells me that there is something there. We just have to wait and see. And quick note, yes, I know companies will, save domains and save the names and placeholders and all of that for many things. I think Sony have the websites up until from PS5 to PS20 or something like that. But Bandai, as of right now, don't have anything beyond Xenoverse 3, so they don't have Xenoverse 4 or 5, which is a weird thing to say right now. Wouldn't be surprised if we get those because he prints money, and we'll talk about that later on as well. But if they definitely weren't going to do a third Xenoverse game, I would think that they either wouldn't register the Xenoverse 3 domains, and if they then decided later on that they weren't going to do it, I would imagine that they would just let the domain slip rather than manually renewing the domains. Which, by the way, costs money. So why waste money if you're not going to do it, right? It just doesn't make sense. But yeah, we know because of that at least at some point, there are tentative plans for a third Xenoverse game. There is a very, very, very real possibility that Xenoverse 3 has been worked on for a while now, and they have been putting content, or I guess porting over content made for the base game for Xenoverse 3 into Xenoverse 2. What do I mean by this? This is what I mean by that. A tweet came out by @Mars_animation back in 2020, just after, it may even be the day of, but just after, like within a few days of the free Supreme Kai of Time update for Xenoverse 2. This was the update that made her playable, made 6-star QQ banks possible. You guys know what the update was. It also added, dual not dual ultimates, it also added like artwork for loading screens. You know what it is. This tweet here, then we read it verbatim. Xenoverse 3 is a potential possibility right now. Nothing to 100%, but after looking at the Supreme Kai of Time's model, she is completely overhauled, and it says here it's not his discovery. Same thing with the model in the artwork. So the models in the artwork. Easy for me to say. They could be backporting from build from Xenoverse 3. They wouldn't do this for anything small. And you can see here the character model for specifically the Supreme Kai of Time before she became a playable character. Well, when she did become a playable character, the character model, was severely updated to be significantly more detailed. Now, you may have just say, oh, well, this doesn't really mean anything. But keep in mind, this was DLC 11. We had 10 paid DLCs before this. So Supreme Kai of Time was in, of course, Xenoverse 1 and Xenoverse 2. And she has a massive role in the Xenoverse 2 story mode, including the base game story mode stuff from the Time Vault and Time Nest, as well as the DLC stuff, for example, the Goku Black Saga, which, spoilers, at the end, which is in the Time Nest, and then Zenai races Infinite Zamasu. Like, she's a massive part of the story, so they wouldn't have... what I'm saying that for is that it wasn't as if she wasn't already, well made, but they just made it even better because most likely, or maybe not most likely, but a good chance is that she was already being made for a possible Dragon Ball Xenoverse 3, and because they were still updating Xenoverse 2 and with what was going on at the time with the world, they just decided to port content over made from Xenoverse 3, possibly into content to keep going Xenoverse 2. Recent paid DLC updates and free updates for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 have, quite frankly, just been very, very, very lackluster. As I've already mentioned, as of right now, the latest DLC that came out about 5 or 6 weeks ago was Future Saga Chapter 2, also known as DLC 18 for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. It's the DLC that added Bell Mod, Ultra Super Villain Jiren, and just base form Mini Goku from Dragon Ball Daima as playable characters. This is quite possibly... well, it's definitely in the top 3, maybe even top 2 worst paid DLC updates Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 has ever got. Bit of a side note for what this video is. For that DLC, I would only recommend it if the characters are characters that you really enjoy, because the skills aren't that good, they're just not. Or if you want to play the story mode yourself, or if you don't want to do it, I have like an hour-long video uploaded of the story mode. It's a 3-part mission. The story mode's excellent. It's really good. That's the only saving grace for this DLC. But what I'm getting at is that this game's been out when they released that DLC for just over 8 years. I believe 8 years and a month, maybe 2, or whatever. This far into the life cycle of Xenoverse 2, there is no reason to have DLC like Future Saga Chapter 2, because it sucked. Future Saga Chapter 1 was excellent, and that should have set a standard for for every DLC that would come out for Xenoverse 2 from that point onwards. So because of how lackluster the DLC has been, there is the idea that, yeah, there's like, I guess like a sort of skeleton crew working on it. A skeleton crew is basically like a very small team from a larger team that previously worked on something. I mean, and that could be the reason why it took like 6 or 7 months for this DLC to come out from when Future Saga Chapter 1 was released for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. So the idea is that because of that, that could mean that them not putting as much resources into it because I'm possibly working on the sequel. As a little bit of a tangent for what this video is, I just want to take a bit of a detour to some extent and mention something that I know at least one person is going to be thinking. You may have already commented it before you watched this part of the video, but and that's the following, and that is that people seem to think that Bandai and even Dims, which it's got absolutely nothing to do with Dims. Yes, they are the developers, but that's what they are. They are the developers, not the publishers or the rights holder like what Shueisha is. But people seem to think that at some point in the past, Bandai Namco and or Dimps have said that Xenoverse 3 won't happen, but they've never said this. Ever. They've just never said it. They've actually hinted towards the opposite, but they have never said what I've just mentioned. They've just never said this. Bit of a side note and a tangent for what this video is, but I just thought it's quite, not interesting, but important to mention that before we go forward with the video. So yeah, they've never said it. They just haven't. Support for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 has already started to stop. Let me explain. various updates and features that were added after the game was released, like a year and a half, starting from a year and a half after the game was released, such as the Hero Coliseum, Dual Ultimates, new custom partner mentor keys, the Canton City TV, that big thing in Canton City, which, by the way, that's only in the multi-lobby, not in the single lobby. They've already started to stop updates for this. The Hero Coliseum, as of right now, hasn't received an update since the free update that came out for Hero of Justice Pack 1, the same DLC that added Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 as playable characters, and the Potential Unleashed transforming Gohan from base form to Potential Unleashed with the glasses from all three of them from the Dragon Ball Super Hero movie. That was the last DLC that updated the Hero Coliseum. I think they may have also slightly updated it so you can purchase stuff with STP medals. Oh, okay, great. Also, they've stopped adding custom partner characters like the mentor keys, which is that's just a massive missed opportunity. The last time that they did that was in the update before the Hero of Justice Pack 1 update, which was the Canton City TV. No, it wasn't. It was a Canton City Vault update. And speaking of the Canton City TV, yeah, they've not updated, well, not updated, they've not shown or used this since, I think, the same update that added the Potential Unleashed transforming Gohan. It was certainly before they finished showing everything, I think, for Hero of Justice Pack 1. So from, like, that time between the Canton City Vault DLC and the Hero of Justice Pack 1 DLC, that time they just really decided to stop updating various existing features. The Hero Coliseum, they stopped showing new updates through the Canton City TV, which I'm kind of glad about because it barely worked, at least for me, and there's videos of that on the channel should you wish to check them out at your own convenience. Okay, yeah, no new Dual Ultimates after the same update, I think, or that may have been a little bit later on. So yeah, you can tell that, yeah, like, them definitely not updating everything like they used to. So I do think because of that, they are somewhat streamlining their approach to new content for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, most likely because of lack of resources, because, again, possibly working on Xenoverse 3. And do keep in mind that Sparking Zero was in development started development late 2018, and it came out late 2024. So it had at least a 6-year development. So if that's going to be the same for Xenoverse 2, Xenoverse 3. Let's say Xenoverse 3 is 2026. I think that's probably the earliest it's going to come out because of, I think, next console release is going to be Sparking Zero for the next Nintendo console, but that, like in 2025. But if it's going to have the same development time, at least as Sparking Zero, then we can say that Xenoverse 3 would have been in development since around 2019, 2020, give or take. We probably won't ever find out about that, but if we do find out, it won't be for a very long time. A lot of the character models, even on the PS5 current gen version, specifically of Xenoverse 2, are severely outdated. You can see right here, this is the PS5 version running on a PS5 of the characters. There's a deliberate pause there, because no, it's actually not. This is the PS4 version running on a PS4 Pro. But before I told you that, you didn't know, because they look almost pretty much identical, with the exception of the more recent characters that were made for, you know, taking advantage of next gen and even past gen, like the PS4 generation of stuff, you know, such as the restrained Broly character model, which is the best in the entire game. What you have to understand is that a lot of these character models, and even the clothing and accessories and all of that, were made for the PS3 version of Xenoverse 1. I think people tend to forget that Xenoverse 1 was also released for PS3 and the Xbox 360. And of course, you know, they then made separate versions for the PS4 and the Xbox One. The then current generation. That's awkward for me to say for some reason. So yeah, I mean, we need Xenoverse 3 to update all of the character models, not just for the characters, but for like the clothing, the accessories. Like, it's severely outdated, and the fact that at least for a split second you couldn't tell that what I showed you earlier, it might still be on the screen right now, who knows, but given that you couldn't tell that this was from the PS4 version and I told you it's from the PS5 version on a PS5, That should be quite alarming to some extent. That, yeah, they need to update this. Let's talk about modders. Now, modders is a bit of a misnomer because they're not. They're just people who are using exploits in the game. And when I say modders, I mean the PS4 version specifically. I don't know if people can do it on the Xbox One version. And I'm not talking about PC players who actually make their own character models, like actual modding. It's a bit of a misnomer. I'm probably partially or fully responsible for people calling people who use mods or, you know, like save files on save edits and save editors on the PS4 version. I'm probably partly responsible for them being called modders because of titles and whatever. But with that said, the reason we actually got STP medals and they removed the ability to purchase the regular TP medals with real money in Xenoverse 2 is because of, and again, I don't know if you can do it on the Xbox One version, but on specifically the PS4 version of Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, people were able to use a save edit file to get infinite Zeni, which isn't really that important, but for Bandai, because it was a microtransaction at the time, infinite TP medals, as in like 99,999,999 of them, right? Like maximum. So therefore, people, like, why bother buying TP medals with real money or spending time to play Xenoverse to grind them out, where you can just get them for free, infinite of them for free. So because of that, Bandai then removed the ability to buy them, and they then added STP medals, which, as far as I'm aware, you can't use a save edit to get any of those. I think you have to either buy them with real money or do in-game stuff to collect them. So because of that, well, the only reason I mentioned that there is because you can't mod specifically the PS5 or the current gen version, so the PS5 version of Xenoverse 2 or the Xbox Series S and X version. You just can't do it. I don't know why, but you just can't do it. Maybe in the future you can, but because of that, and because you can still do it on the past gen version and then use the save transfer to go to the main version, the current gen version, because of that, if Xenoverse 3 happens, when it does happen, it's not going to be out for PS4. It might not even be out for PS5. It might be the next gen console, like PS6 or Xbox 720. So I think that's going to be a main reason, or some reason, I guess, as to why they will do a third Xenoverse game, because then they can also then sell more stuff that you can't get through a save file. So if you dislike STP medals, you have the PS4 modders who use a save file edit for that. Genuinely, on the website they said to balance the in-game behavior and activity and fairness, they will be removing the ability to buy TP medals, but it will have a new currency coming out, and then said in May, which would have been when Future Saga Chapter 1 came out. Check the website. Like, for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to put it in, but seriously, check the website. They literally mention it right there. Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 is becoming, for the first time ever, unfortunately, it is becoming legitimately unplayable. At least against other players. Not with, but against other players, at least in player matches, which is what I do when I play the game and record videos, trash talkers, etc, 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 etc. Randomly, between fights and when we ready up, it will say that the lobby has been disconnected, and I've asked you guys if it's been happening to you as well, and yeah, you guys have been saying, yeah, it's been happening to you as well. And if it does happen to you, please let me know in the comments. Sorry, it's just so bad. This has been happening for about the last 5 or so weeks since the free update came out for Future Saga Chapter 2 DLC 18 for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. And at least as of the recording of this video, and presumably the upload of this video, it's not been fixed, and I don't know why. It's been close to 2 months now, and Bandai have not fixed this, and I don't know why. Is it because they can't? Regardless, it's becoming legitimately, literally unplayable, because if it keeps crashing, you can't play the game, or you're limited to what you can actually do in the game. So I do think they have to move on to Xenoverse 3 at some point, build it from the ground up possibly, and that's probably what's taking so long, to hopefully fix the issues that Xenoverse 2 has right now. Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 is actually dying. Since the Future Saga Chapter 1 update came out, I've noticed just a stark drop in at least the people who are in the multi-lobby, like, you know, like this, around like this area here. Hopefully you can see, people tend to hang out, and people still tend to do that, but Before, it was legitimately 24/7, or at least whenever I played it, and it's the same times roughly that I play, and there's either nobody there or there's rarely anyone there. Now, people have said that Sparking Zero was going to kill Xenoverse 2. No. At least on the PC version, on the Steam chart, I believe it's called, you could actually see the playbase, and it did take a drop on the PC version for a few days, maybe a week after the release of Sparking Zero. But then a few days after, it just went back to what it was before, almost verbatim previously. So the playbase have returned, but even before, like a year or so before the release of Sparking Zero, I noticed just people dropping Xenoverse 2. Sure, people do come back when updates come out, but given how infrequent these paid DLC updates are, between every 6 to 8 to 9 months, yeah, you can tell that Xenoverse 2 has a massive problem, which honestly, I hate to say it can't be fixed. The way you fix it is you do the next game to get more people in, then maybe people go and check out what Xenoverse 2 was and stuff like that. But yeah, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, and I can't believe I'm actually saying it, for a while now, it is dying. And the main reason why at some point we will get Dragon Ball Xenoverse 3, it's a cynical reason. The main reason is money. The Xenoverse series, the Dragon Ball games in general, just sell a lot. Dragon Ball equals free money, basically. Now, given how much DLC they've done for Xenoverse 2, and given that it's been slowing down over the past several years, it's fairly obvious that Xenoverse 2 is, and has been for a long time now, in its twilight days, meaning like the end of its, I guess, life, right? Like, and let me just say this, they're not going to shut the servers down, not for a very long time. As of this recording, and again, presumably upload, the servers for Burst Limit, for Dragon Ball Z Burst Limit on the Xbox 360 and on the PS3 are still active. So if those servers are still up, I can't imagine that they are going to shut the servers down for Xenoverse 2 any point in the near or even in the very far future. It just doesn't make sense. So you'll always be able to play Xenoverse 2 and presumably Xenoverse 1. But Xenoverse, the amount of DLC that it's got is extremely expensive, and the only reason they've done that is because they know we are going to buy it because of how successful it is. So yeah, if you think that they won't release a new game with more DLC, but just put like these 70 to 80, maybe even 110, 100 bucks tag on for like the collector's edition and deluxe edition, if you think they won't do that just to get some money, unfortunately, you're just not living in the real world. Xenoverse 3, regardless of anything else that I've said in this video, will happen for one reason above all, and that is money. And those are some of the reasons why eventually at some point we are going to get Dragon Ball Xenoverse 3. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with me, and I will see you in the very next Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 video.